Mara Ellie walked through Dust Haven at dawn with a basket pressed close to her chest. The street lay quiet, but whispers rose the moment she passed the general store. "There she goes," one woman muttered. Another said, "That girl eats more than she works." Mara kept her gaze low. She saw only dust, boots, and her own shadow. "Morning, Mara," an older man called, though his smirk stole any kindness. She nodded and moved on, gripping the basket until her knuckles whitened. The creek waited beyond the stables, and she hoped silence would ease her heart. A ranch hand near the trough called, "You look worn out." She answered softly, "Just working." He shrugged and turned away. At the pump, two women stopped her. "That dress still holding together?" one asked. The other laughed. "Barely." Mara swallowed hard. "Please let me pass," she said. "No talking back now," the woman taunted. "Big girl like you should learn manners." Mara whispered, "I'm only trying to finish my chores." They rolled their eyes and let her go. A teenage boy strutted by, pointing with loud laughter. Mara felt her throat tighten, but she said nothing. She hurried toward the water. The gentle rush of the creek offered a small mercy. She knelt, dipped the clothes, and whispered, "Just finish." A girl nearby asked, "They trouble you again?" Mara answered, "It's fine," though her voice shook. When she returned, Sheriff Dalton stepped from his office. "Rough morning," he drawled. Mara ignored him, but he chuckled. "Folks just having fun." She kept walking. Dalton added, "You ought to toughen up." Mara whispered, "I'm doing my best." By afternoon, the sun glared on the street like a furnace. Mara carried the washed clothes through town. A pair of boys mocked her steps. "Look at her wobble," one jeered. Mara quickened her pace. Her cheeks burned. A shopkeeper called, "Pay no mind to fools," but she only nodded. Behind the boarding house, she hung the last sheet. The yard felt empty. She sat on the back step, folding her hands. Soft boots trod nearby, then faded. She fought the pressure behind her eyes. Mrs. Tally stomped out and pointed at a torn hem. "You do this," she snapped. "No, Mara answered. "It was, excuses," Mrs. Tally said. "Get it right next time." Mara murmured, "Yes, Another boarder whispered, "Don't mind her," but Mara said, "She's right. I'll fix it." As the sun slid behind the roofs, lanterns flickered along the street. Mara stepped out for air. She hugged her arms and stared at the ground. Voices from saloons drifted through the dusk, rough and careless. She whispered, "Maybe tomorrow will be easier," though she did not believe it. A horse snorted. Mara looked up. A tall cowboy rode slowly past, his hat low against the dim light. He held himself calm and steady. His eyes settled on her with a quiet question. "You all right there, miss?" he asked. Mara hesitated. "Yes, sir." He studied her a moment. "Sure about that?" She lowered her gaze. The cowboy did not ride on. His silence felt like shelter. The horse stamped, and he spoke again, soft as dusk. "Someone's been unkind." Mara whispered, "It's nothing." He didn't believe her. His gaze moved across her tired face, her worn dress, her shaking hands. Without another word, he touched the brim of his hat. His horse stepped closer, gentle on the dust. Mara lifted her head an inch. For the first time that day, she felt seen. The cowboy reined in, watching her with calm concern, sensing a truth she could not speak. Mara stepped into the harvest fair just after noon, carrying a tray of cups her aunt pushed into her hands. Lanterns swung above the tables, and fiddlers played near the barn doors. She hoped the noise would hide her, but her aunt muttered, "Move quick now," before turning away. Mara lowered her head and whispered, "Yes, though her steps stayed careful on the dusty ground. Two women near the pie stand watched her pass. "Too heavy to be serving folk," one said. The other smirked. Fair might run slow with her working. Mara felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept walking. A drunken man waved at her. "Sweetheart, you won't find a husband moving like that." Mara said softly, "Sir, just tell me what you need." He laughed and replied, "Nothing you can give." A girl at the table whispered to her friend, "Watch this." Mara leaned forward to place the cups, and the girl's hand slid behind her, tugging at the apron strings. The knot slipped loose. The apron dropped to the dirt, leaving her patched dress exposed. Laughter broke from every direction. "Mara, look at that," one boy shouted. "Big dress for a big girl." Mara froze. Her hands shook as she reached for the apron. She whispered, "Please stop," but the laughter grew louder. Sheriff Dalton leaned against a fence post, arms crossed, watching as if the moment amused him. He made no move to help. Mara's vision blurred. Her stomach dropped, and she felt the crowd tightening around her. Her aunt snapped, "Pick it up and quit making trouble." Mara swallowed back tears and whispered, "Yes, She grabbed the apron, stumbling as she backed away. The music kept playing, bright and careless, but every note felt sharp against her skin. Behind the barn, she pressed her back to the wooden boards and tried to slow her breathing. "They didn't mean nothing," she whispered, though the words hurt to speak. Her hands trembled. She wiped her face with her sleeve, leaving dust across her cheek. "Just breathe. Don't let them see you cry." Footsteps sounded on the straw. She startled as a quiet voice asked, "You hiding back here?" Jonas Hale stepped into view, the same cowboy who had watched her the night before. His hat cast a soft shadow over his steady eyes. Mara lowered her gaze. "I'm fine," she whispered. Jonas shook his head. "Doesn't look that way." He stopped a respectful distance from her. "Did they hurt you?" Mara tried to answer, but her voice caught. She turned her face away, blinking fast. Jonas waited without pressing her. The fair noise faded behind them, leaving only the soft rustle of straw near their boots. He reached into his coat and held out a clean handkerchief. "Here," he said gently. Mara hesitated, then took it with trembling fingers. "Thank you," she murmured. Jonas watched her wrap the cloth in her hand. As she shifted, her sleeve slipped back. Jonas saw the faint bruises along her arm. His expression changed, quiet but sharp, as if he recognized something she had tried hard to hide. He drew a slow breath, steadying himself before speaking again, his voice low with concern. "You shouldn't have to bear such things alone, Mara," he said quietly today. Mara woke before sunrise, her body aching from the long night. Her aunt stood over her, tapping a boot against the floorboards. "Up," the woman snapped. "You've got extra hours today. Folks say you embarrassed us at the fair." Mara pushed herself upright, whispering, "Yes, She tied her worn shawl and walked into the boarding house kitchen. The stove heat pressed against her, thick as her exhaustion. Pots clattered as her aunt barked, "Move quicker. You're slow as winter mud." Mara kept her eyes lowered. "I'm trying," she said softly. "You never try hard enough." The front door swung open. Jonas Hale stepped inside, dust on his boots from the morning ride. "Beg pardon," he said, setting a small list on the counter. "Looking for supplies." Her aunt scoffed. "You'll have to wait. This girl can't seem to keep up." Jonas glanced at Mara. "She looks tired." "She's always tired." Her aunt waved her dismissively. "Never was built for real work." Mara's hands tightened around a tin cup. Jonas stepped closer. He said quietly, "I heard enough at the fair yesterday. No need to talk that way today." Her aunt stiffened. "She's my responsibility." Jonas shook his head. "Not by law." His voice stayed calm, but firm. "She's grown. And I've got paid work waiting if she wants it." Mara froze, the cup trembling in her grasp. "Paid work?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Yes," Jonas said. "Gathering eggs. Tending the garden. Helping in the kitchen. Nothing harsh. Nothing hurried." Her aunt snapped, "She's not going anywhere." Jonas met her glare without raising his voice. "You don't own her. If she wants the job, she's free to take it." Mara swallowed hard. Why offer me this?" "Because you deserve better than what you've been given." His tone stayed steady. "And I could use the help." Her aunt barked, "She'll fail you. She fails everything." Mara's breath hitched, but Jonas said gently, "Let her decide." Silence stretched. Mara looked at her worn boots, then at his patient eyes. Fear tugged at her, but something warmer rose beneath it. "I'd like to try," she whispered. Her aunt threw up her hands. "Fine. Go then. Don't come crawling back when it falls apart." Mara nodded, heart pounding. She slipped into her small room, gathered her folded dress, the ribbon her mother once tied in her hair, and the handkerchief Jonas had given her. When she stepped outside, Jonas waited beside his horse, holding a spare blanket roll. "You ready?" he asked. She hesitated. "I'm nervous." "Understandable." He helped her mount gently. "But you're not alone." They rode out of Dust Haven, hooves stirring dust beneath the rising sun. Mara glanced back once, seeing the town shrink behind them. Her fear loosened with every step. Jonas kept his voice low, steady as the horse's rhythm. No one will trouble you on my land, he promised. She breathed easier, holding his quiet promise close as the trail opened beneath soft light. The Hale Ranch sat quiet under a pale morning sky, the open fields rolling out like brushed gold. Mara stepped down from the horse slowly, her legs shaky from the long ride. Jonas walked beside her in silence, giving her space but never letting her feel abandoned. This is your place now, he said gently. No one here bites. She tried to smile. I'll do my best. That's all anyone should ask, he answered. The ranch gate swung open, and an older man with sun-creased eyes waved them in. Jonas, you brought company, he called. Name's Henry. Good to meet you, miss. Mara startled at the kindness. Good morning, sir. No sir needed, Henry chuckled. You're welcome here. Jonas nodded. Henry's been with this ranch longer than I've been alive. He'll show you the lines. Henry studied her gently. You look like someone who works hard, even when folks don't notice. Mara lowered her gaze, unsure how to answer. They walked toward the kitchen shed where warm biscuits scented the air. Millie, a round woman with flour on her apron, turned with a bright smile. Oh, there she is. Honey, you look half-starved. Sit down and take one. Mara froze, confused by the soft tone. For me? For who else? Millie pressed a biscuit into her hand. Eat before you fall over. Jonas stepped back toward the doorway. I'll check the north fence. She's in good hands. Mara watched him go, unsure whether to call after him or stay quiet. Henry tapped her shoulder lightly. Jonas keeps his words few, but he means every one of them. She nodded, chewing slowly, letting the warmth settle inside her chest. Millie wiped her hands. Come on now. Garden's this way. Jonas said you'd help me there. They walked through a path lined with low fences. Chickens clucked near the coop. Mara stepped carefully, afraid she would mess something up. If there's anything you don't like me touching, please tell me, she whispered. Millie raised a brow. Why would I say something like that? People usually do. Well, not here. Millie placed a basket in her hands. Gather eggs gentle. Speak soft to the hens. They like calm company. Mara moved through the coop slowly. The timid mare in the paddock watched her with wide eyes, ears flicking nervously. Mara whispered, It's all right. I'm nervous too. The mare edged closer as if she understood. Henry leaned on the fence. She doesn't warm up to many, he said. Seems she likes you. That simple sentence almost broke her. She blinked fast, pretending to focus on the eggs. By sunset she had tended the garden, fed the chickens, and helped Millie wash vegetables for supper. Every thank you, every gentle tone from the ranch hands left her stunned, unsure how to live without insults following her every step. When night fell, Jonas led her to the small guest cabin. It's old, he said, but safe. If you need anything, just knock on the main house. Thank you, she whispered. Later, with her lantern burning low, she sat alone on the narrow bed, fighting memories of laughter, jeers, and her aunt's sharp voice. The ranch walls felt too quiet, too kind. Outside, Jonas paused when he saw the thin glow under her door. She's hurting, he murmured. Down by the barn, Mara overheard Henry's tired sigh as he spoke to Millie. Town's already talking. They're saying things about her living with a cowboy. Mara's heart dropped. The gossip had followed her. Mara walked beside Jonas as they entered Dust Haven, the morning air thick with dust and murmurs. A pair of women near the well whispered, She threw herself at him, that's what folks say. Another voice added, Jonas only took her in out of pity. Mara's steps faltered. Jonas looked over. Ignore them, he said quietly. She kept her eyes on the ground. They always talk. Inside the general store, Sheriff Dalton leaned against a shelf with a smirk. Well now, he drawled, if it isn't the ranch stray. Hope she ain't causing trouble on your land, Hale. Jonas didn't blink. Sheriff, she's doing honest work. Dalton shrugged. That's not what folks are saying. Mara's breath caught, but before she could respond, Jonas stepped closer to her, resting a steady hand on her shoulder. The room fell silent. The storekeeper cleared his throat and pretended to sort flour sacks. Jonas spoke low. Anyone spreading lies can speak to me directly. Dalton scoffed but backed away. Mara felt a strange warmth bloom beneath her ribs. As they walked out, she whispered, You didn't have to do that. Yes, Jonas replied, I did. The afternoon passed quietly at the ranch, but Mara couldn't shake the whispers. When evening settled and the sky turned deep violet, she slipped into the barn, sinking beside the haystack. Her shoulders shook as she wiped at her eyes. Jonas found her minutes later. Mara? His voice was soft, careful. Talk to me. She pressed her hands to her face. I'm tired, she whispered. Tired of them laughing. Tired of never being enough. Jonas knelt beside her. You are enough. She shook her head. They say I'm foolish. That I followed you because I had nowhere else. He met her gaze. You came because you wanted a chance to breathe. There's no shame in that. Her voice cracked. Then why does it hurt so much? Cruelty always hurts, he said. But their words don't decide your worth. She looked at him through trembling lashes. You really believe that? I do, he answered. And one day, you will too. Something in her chest eased, a small spark pushing back the darkness. She wiped her cheeks and breathed shakily. Thank you. Jonas rose slowly and offered his hand. She took it, letting him pull her to her feet. For the first time in a long while, she felt steady. But as they stepped out of the barn, the quiet was broken by the sound of hooves. Lantern light flickered against the approaching rider. Sheriff Dalton reined in, eyes sharp with purpose. Evening, he said coldly. Got business with that girl of yours, Hale? A serious accusation's been made. Mara's stomach dropped as the sheriff dismounted, boots hitting the ground with a thud that echoed like a threat. Jonas stepped slightly in front of Mara, his stance firm though his voice stayed calm. State it plain, Sheriff. Dalton adjusted his hat. A merchant claims she stole from his wagon last week. Mara's eyes widened. I've never stolen anything. Jonas replied, she was here at the ranch that whole day. Dalton smirked. Funny how your word keeps covering her tracks. Wind rustled through the dry grass as tension thickened. Mara's hands curled at her sides, but she lifted her chin. I have. Sheriff Dalton rode up in a cloud of dust, swung from his saddle, and strode toward the porch where Mara stood. She clutched her mother's old shawl tight against her chest as his boots thudded across the boards. There she is, Dalton said. The boarding house claims she stole from a guest. Figured I'd come hear her excuse. Mara's breath hitched. I never stole anything. Jonas stepped out of the barn, wiping dust from his hands. She was here all week, he said. You know that. Dalton snorted. That so? Or are you defending her because she's living under your roof now? Mara flinched as he looked her up and down. Jonas walked forward until he stood squarely between them. Sheriff, you're twisting lies. Dalton folded his arms. Folks say it ain't right, her staying out here with you. Looks like sin to me. Mara's fingers trembled at the edge of her shawl. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the dirt yard, but she felt cold. Jonas didn't raise his voice. You're done hurting her. Dalton's eyes narrowed. Is that right? Yes, Jonas said. Now leave. The sheriff stepped back, jaw tight. He spat into the dust, swung onto his horse, and muttered, this ain't finished. Then he rode off, bitterness trailing behind him like a dark tail in the wind. The ranch fell quiet again. A hawk circled high above the fields. Mara sank onto the porch step, staring at the loose boards beneath her boots. Jonas crouched beside her. You all right? She kept her gaze low. He knows how to cut where it hurts. He doesn't get that right, Jonas said softly. Her hands twisted the shawl. He wasn't the first. Jonas waited, patient as dusk settling over the land. She swallowed hard. There was someone in town. Years ago. He said kind things. Looked at me like I mattered. Her voice wavered. I believed him. Jonas's brow tightened, but he stayed quiet, letting her speak. He asked me to meet him by the churchyard one evening. She drew a shaky breath. I thought he meant it. Thought maybe someone finally saw me. The wind tugged at her hair while she pressed the shawl closer. When I went, she whispered, he was there with 2 others. They laughed. Said they'd only wanted to see if I'd come. Said a girl like me would follow any scrap of kindness. Her throat tightened. That was the night the gossip started. It never stopped. Jonas's jaw worked, fury burning beneath his calm. Mara. I'm sorry. She shook her head. Please don't tell anyone. I can't bear them finding out. Promise you won't let that story reach the town again. Jonas placed a gentle hand on her arm. I promise. Your dignity stays yours. Her breath trembled, but something in her eyes shifted, an opening, faint as dawn edging over the plains. Thank you, she murmured. Jonas stood with her, the sky deepening to amber behind them. For the first time in years, she felt a small, steady warmth rising from within, as though her heart dared to believe she was worth protecting. And she realized it might finally break the wall she had carried for so long. Morning light stretched across the Hale ranch, warm and gold, rolling over the fields like a gentle tide. Mara stepped from the cabin with a small smile, surprised it came so easily. Millie waved from the kitchen door. "Come on in, girl," Millie called. "Biscuits are ready, and I'll show you how to keep them soft." Mara brushed dust from her skirt. "You're sure you don't mind teaching me?" "If I minded, I wouldn't bother," Millie said with a wink. Inside, the kitchen smelled of butter and warm flour. As they worked, Millie nudged her shoulder lightly. "You've got a good hand for dough." Mara's cheeks warmed. "I'm trying." And succeeding. Later, Henry met her near the chicken coop. "Egg baskets looking fuller these days," he said. She glanced up nervously. "Is that good?" Henry chuckled. "Ain't no rancher alive who'd complain about hens earning their keep. You're doing fine, Mara." The praise settled inside her like a steady flame. She lifted her chin a little higher as she crossed the yard, boots tapping softly against sun-baked earth. Her favorite moments were with the timid mare. The horse nickered when Mara approached, ears flicking like she recognized the softness in Mara's steps. "Easy now," Mara whispered. "I'm right here." Jonas leaned on the fence nearby, arms folded loosely. "She trusts you." Mara stroked the mare's neck. "She reminds me of how I felt when I came here." Jonas nodded. "She's calmer with you." Mara looked over. "Why do you say that?" "Because she stands still when you speak," he replied. "Tells me she feels safe." The words settled deeper than she expected. As days passed, Mara found herself humming while sweeping the porch. Millie teased that it made the dust dance prettier. Henry grinned each time she passed by the barn, tipping his hat with quiet affection. The ranch felt like a place where her steps mattered. Jonas watched her from a respectful distance, never intruding, always steady. When their eyes met, he gave her a small nod, the kind that said he saw her strength returning piece by piece. One evening, dark clouds rolled in, heavy as old sorrow. Wind hissed against the windows, and thunder cracked across the plains like splitting wood. Mara froze near the barn door, breath catching as the storm echoed memories she tried to bury. Another thunderclap shook the sky. She stumbled inside the barn, pressing herself into a corner behind sacks of feed, shawl wrapped tight. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Footsteps approached, slow, careful. Jonas stepped inside, lantern held low. "Mara?" His voice stayed soft. "You in here?" She couldn't speak. Another rumble shook the rafters, she flinched. Jonas paused, then walked toward the shadows. When he found her, he set the lantern down and lowered himself to the ground beside her, leaving space between them. "Storm's loud," he murmured. "You're safe. Nothing's coming for you." Mara kept her gaze fixed on the floorboards. "It sounds like, back then." "I know," Jonas said. "Breathe with me. Nice and slow." She listened to his steady rhythm, letting it guide her trembling breath. Gradually, the storm became background noise, no longer a threat. "You're doing fine," he whispered. Her breathing settled. "Jonas, thank you." He gave her a small nod. "Anytime." They sat in the quiet barn until the rain softened. Mara realized the fear had faded, not because the storm stopped, but because Jonas had stayed. For the first time, peace felt possible. The next morning, Henry rode in from Dust Haven, face stern. "News from town," he said. "They are holding a public meeting to discuss the matter of Mara Ellery." The words settled like a cold wind across the ranch. Jonas saddled the horses at first light, the air cool and still over the dusty yard. Mara stood near the fence, hands shaking slightly. "You don't have to come," she whispered. Jonas tightened a strap. "I'm not letting you walk in there alone." She swallowed hard. "They'll stare." "Let 'em," he said. "Truth don't change because folks glare at it." They rode toward Dust Haven, who's kicking small clouds into the rising sun. Mara kept her shawl tight around her shoulders, heart thudding with each mile. The church hall was already full. Lanterns glowed along the walls, casting long shadows across stiff-backed benches. Murmurs rippled as Mara entered beside Jonas. Dalton stepped forward with a smug tilt of his hat. "Town's gathered to address the conduct of Mara Ellery," he announced loudly. "Seems some folks think she's been wronged. I aim to set the record straight." Mara stiffened, eyes on the floor. A woman in the crowd asked, "What's she done now?" Dalton smirked. Depends on which story you prefer. Some say she spent too much time chasing men. Others recall her stirring trouble at the boarding house. She's always been a burden. Gasps floated through the room. Mara's breath hitched, and her fingers dug into her shawl. Jonas rose slowly from the bench. That's enough. Dalton scoffed. Sit down, Hale. This isn't your affair. It is when you drag lies through a public hall, Jonas said. His voice was calm, but the room went quiet. Mara's worked hard every day she's been on my ranch. She's honest. She's gentle. She minds her own business. That's more than I can say for the tongues wagging in here. A ranch hand stepped forward. Sheriff, she's never done wrong by any of us. Another spoke. Girl works from sunrise till the dust settles. Ain't seen her harm a soul. Dalton's jaw tightened. You fools don't know the half of her past. Jonas faced him directly. We know enough. We know she deserves respect. And we know bullying masked as law is still bullying. A few townspeople shifted uncomfortably. A man near the back muttered, Dalton, you're pressing too hard. Mara raised her eyes just enough to see the crowd turning. Confusion and relief tangled in her chest. Dalton jabbed a finger toward her. You all forget she's been trouble since she could walk. Jonas stepped closer. What you call trouble is a woman surviving in spite of you. You've mocked her in the street, twisted stories to humiliate her, and used your badge to scare her quiet. That ain't law. That's cruelty. The hall filled with a tense silence. Faces reddened, boots scraped, and whispers spread like wildfire. Millie made her way to the front. Sheriff, you've gone too far. Folks are tired of your temper. Dalton's expression darkened. You're taking her side? Henry answered from the aisle. We're taking the side of decency. Mara stood frozen as the weight shifted off her shoulders for the first time. The room no longer felt like a trap. It felt, shockingly, fair. Dalton's face twisted with rage. You think you can make a fool of me? He barked. Jonas kept his voice steady. You did that yourself. With a furious growl, Dalton lunged across the aisle toward Jonas, exposing the darkness he had tried so long to hide. Dalton's sudden lunge sent a gasp through the church hall. Jonas caught his arm before the blow landed, holding him steady with calm strength. Let go of me. Dalton snarled. Jonas didn't raise his voice. Settle down, Sheriff. Pastor Whitlow hurried forward, robes brushing the wooden floor. Sheriff Dalton, this is a house of peace. Dalton spat back. She's turned you all against me. Mara stood frozen near the bench, her breath thin as dust. A ranch hand spoke up. No one turned us, Sheriff. We just finally saw what you are. Dalton jerked, trying to break free, but Jonas kept him steady. Stop fighting, Jonas said quietly. You're only proving the truth. The pastor lifted a hand. Jonas, bring him here. Jonas guided Dalton toward the front. Boots scraped across the boards as townsfolk stepped aside. The hall fell into tense silence until Mrs. Callum, usually timid, rose with trembling hands. I have something to say, she whispered. Dalton glared. You stay quiet. She shook her head. No. Not anymore. You threatened me last winter when I asked why you fined my husband for something he didn't do. Murmurs filled the room. A shopkeeper stood next. He overcharged my boy for a harmless scrap with a deputy. Then Henry stepped forward. Sheriff's temper's been hitting folks for years. Dalton's face drained of color. Pastor Whitlow turned to the crowd. Any more voices? A soft reply came from the back. He scared my daughter so bad she wouldn't walk to school. Another man added, he lied about that fight at the saloon. Confessions poured out like a long-blocked river. Each one made Dalton shrink, his anger turning into a cornered bitterness. The pastor squared his shoulders. Sheriff Dalton, by the will of this town, your badge is removed. He reached out, tugging the tarnished star from Dalton's vest. Dalton roared, you fools. You're all blind. Two men seized his arms as he thrashed. Jonas stepped aside, watching with steady eyes while the former sheriff was dragged toward the door. You'll regret this. Dalton shouted as he was forced outside, his voice fading into the dusty morning. Silence filled the hall. Mara stood trembling, her fingers clutching the shawl at her chest. For the first time in years, no one stared at her with mockery. Their eyes held something different. Shame, regret, maybe understanding. Millie approached gently. You all right, child? Mara opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her throat felt tight, but the weight pressing on her chest had begun to lift. She stepped toward the door, pushing it open. Sunlight spilled over her face, warm and clean against her skin. She breathed in deeply, the dust in the air no longer choking. Jonas followed her outside. "Mara," he said softly, "you all right?" She turned, tears blurring her sight. "Yes," she whispered. "I think I am." Jonas nodded once, quiet and steady beside her. The breeze carried the church's fading murmurs away as Mara stood in the open yard, wondering, perhaps for the first time, if she finally had a place she could call home. Mara rode back to the ranch beside Jonas, with Henry and Millie following close behind. The morning light washed the fields in pale gold, and the air felt gentler than it had in months. Mara kept her hands steady on the reins, her breath soft with a quiet relief she barely understood. "You holding up all right?" Henry asked as they reached the yard. "She will be," Millie said warmly before Mara could answer. Mara managed a small smile. "I'm all right. Truly." The dust settled around them as they dismounted. Jonas watched her closely, not with worry, but with a calm pride that steadied her more than she expected. "Plenty of work waiting," he said. "If you're up for it." "I am," she replied, and the simple truth of the words filled her chest with warmth. They scattered to their tasks. Mara moved through the morning chores with a new lightness, each motion crisp and sure. She brushed down the horses, stacked feed, and carried buckets across the yard. A cool breeze drifted through the barn doors, stirring flecks of hay that sparkled in the sun. For the first time in a long while, the ranch felt like a place she could breathe. Henry passed by with a saddle slung over his shoulder. "Never seen you smile this much." Millie stopped beside them, her apron fluttering. "She's earned every bit of peace she finds." Jonas appeared then, holding something wrapped in burlap. "Mara," he called softly. She stepped toward him, brushing dirt from her gloves. "What is it?" "Something you need," he said. "Thought you should have your own." He unwrapped the bundle, revealing a pair of sturdy, well-made boots, clean stitching, firm soles, leather soft enough to break in easy. Mara stared, unable to speak. "They're yours," Jonas said. "Not charity. Just right." Her breath caught. "I don't know what to say." "Thank you works fine," Henry teased. She lifted the boots gently, as though they might vanish. "Thank you," she whispered, meeting Jonas's eyes. He nodded once, quiet and steady, as though giving her boots was no grand thing at all. The day passed with a calm rhythm. Chickens clucked near the coop. Wind nudged the tall grass. Mara moved through it all with an unfamiliar ease, no longer shrinking, no longer bracing for harsh voices that never came. When evening settled, she stepped onto the porch. The sky blazed orange over the horizon, fading to rose and purple. She leaned on the railing, letting the last light warm her face. The shadows of her past still existed, but they no longer held her by the throat. She breathed freely. Bootsteps approached. Jonas joined her, stopping at a respectful distance. "Good view tonight," he said. "It is," she answered. "Feels different now." He folded his hands, watching the fading sun. "Place is better with you here." Mara blinked back sudden tears. "I'm starting to believe I belong." "You do," he said simply. Silence settled between them, soft and sure. Two quiet souls, resting side by side without any need to fill the spaces with grand promises. As the last rim of sunlight dipped beyond Dust Haven, Mara took a small step forward. For the first time, the future didn't frighten her. It felt like a beginning, one shaped by dignity, safety, and hope.